Hello, and welcome to the second free lesson designed to help you discover what Unveiling Glory's journey is all about. If you recall, the last time we talked about 4 blind men who described an elephant differently. In the same way, we are trying to give you a big overview of how this journey can be described. The first lesson described the journey in terms of cat and dog theology, or a God-centered versus people-centered theology or attitudes. Cats, we saw, were more centered on people, and most of the time centered on themselves. Dogs were more focused on God. They were more concerned about making God famous than they were about Him making them famous. In the second lesson, we want you to see this journey is not about a people-centered versus God-centered theology, but discovering a treasure that brings you ultimate, endless, and authentic joy. A treasure so great, so wonderful, it puts you in awe, and all you want to do is sell everything you have to buy that treasure. To better give you an understanding of what this hidden treasure is, this joy, I want to take you on a little tour. But before we begin the tour, let me tell you a little bit about where we are. This studio was built on the property that I own. My kids actually run the mixer and cameras along with some of their homeschool friends, whatever volunteers we can find. My mother lives with me. Because my dad died in 1996, 2 years later, we realized it wasn't healthy for my mom to live, so we invited her to live with us. As a result, she sold her house in Pittsburgh, we sold our house in Arizona, and together we bought this house here in the Richmond, Virginia area. When we were first looking for this house, we drove down the road and saw a for sale sign here, so we stopped to take a look at it. Immediately, my wife said, "I will never live in this house." She didn't like the way it looked on the outside because she was hoping for a more traditional southern-looking home with a porch and a swing. Anyhow, as we looked on the inside, it was perfect. It already had a built-in apartment on the lower level for my mom. It was complete with a writing chair for her to go up the steps. It had an office where I could work, and it had a homeschool room for our 4 children. And although we weren't looking for it on our property, it also came with 10 acres, a horse barn, and 2 horse pastures, which we've basically never used because we've never really wanted to own horses. So after seeing how the house met all of our needs, we ended up buying this house, and my mom eventually moved in with us. And as the years passed by, the Lord began to bless and expand our ministry. As a result, I ended up outgrowing the office, and after much prayer, we ended up building this studio on our property. Hence, we have what we call our video studio. It not only has this studio, but an office, storage area, and even an apartment for our Unveiling Glory staff who come in from overseas. That's where this is being recorded. So with that being said, let me take you on a little journey to help you understand how this Unveiling Glory's journey is all about joy and finding a hidden treasure. We're talking about everlasting joy, a joy that'll never fade, that'll never run out. But I want to give you some examples of joy that was very short-lived. It wasn't at all everlasting. This, you can kind of see it, is a soccer goal. This is something that my boys just had to have. I'm using them as an example in this whole short-lived joy series. We got this soccer goal for them, and we used it up in the back field, upstairs field, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 times maybe one summer. And after that, it got relegated to the barn. and it's never been used since. It wasn't even close to everlasting joy. It wasn't even much of a summer's joy, but it was a joy in their lives. This is Luke's workbench. Luke wanted to lift weights, and so, Dad, can we get a weight set? So we went to a friend who had one used, and so we got that one used for sale, and so we brought it out here, and he lifted, I don't know, 3 months, 4 months. One of the things he just had to have, as you can tell, tons of dust, hasn't been used in a long, long time. Back there are all of his weights that just sit there unused. Here is a bicycle. As you can tell, it hasn't been ridden in a long, long time. There's more back in there. My kids, we love to ride bikes. We've taken our bikes down to Williamsburg and ridden them, but they've been put to the back barn area, and now they're hardly ever used. That which was going to bring them great joy, very, very temporary joy. This is Hunter's four-wheeler. That's mine right over there. We love to do four-wheeling. Hunter and I go four-wheeling quite a bit together. But this is bringing us a lot of joy. But as you can tell, I don't know if you can see very well, but the body has to be taped up quite a bit. This is held together more by tape than anything else. It's broken down over here. The muffler now is off, and we've got to go buy ourselves a new muffler. So right now it can't be used. So that which brings us a lot of joy can be very temporary if it's broken or not working right. These are Hunter's rollerblades. Hunter's behind that camera over there. Hunter just had to have these. One of the things that just everybody had them, so he wanted to get them, and these lasted, what, Hunter, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a year, something along those lines. But these are the rollerblades that he just had to have. And then his best friend got this. He and his best friend were being homeschooled together, and when his best friend got it, he had to have one. This lasted no more than 3 days. It was a very temporary, just had to have it type gun. They played with it 3 or 4 days, and after that they were on to their next toy. It wasn't everlasting at all. Scooters. 2 of them. My sons just had to have them. Dad, we got to have them, got to get them. So we ended up getting them. I don't know if it was their birthday or Christmas, whatever, but scooters. As you can see, rust has set in. This is supposed to be able to adjust up and down, but because of the rust, it doesn't. They haven't used the scooters in, I don't know, months, if not, my oldest son, years. Definitely outgrew them. Back here, hockey sticks. Another must-have. We went out and got these for the boys, enjoyed doing it, but they've used them, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 times out on the streets or in other areas, maybe with friends a few times, but besides that, they've been relegated to the back box, never used. And then there was lacrosse. Had to have them. My son Luke was watching lacrosse. His best friend in Arizona was doing lacrosse, so we had to get them. So we got the lacrosse sticks. As we got the lacrosse sticks, we threw it back and forth, 10, 15, 20 times maybe. But over time, the interest got lost. It too got relegated to the back box, and the dog ate the other lacrosse stick. So we only have one and hardly ever, is never used now. Back there is the croquet set. We've had that for years. Probably my fault. We have never, ever used the croquet set. I thought it would be so much fun getting out when I was a child. I used to do it, but they never seemed to ever, I never set it up for them, or they never seemed to want to have it set up somehow, but we've never used the croquet set. Nothing even close to being joy, much less everlasting joy. I've given my kids lots of things. At the time, they were treasures to them. Treasures that, in reality, were very short-lived. They brought them a joy, but a very temporary joy, not an everlasting joy at all. Nothing that satisfied them long term. But what if I were able to give my kids a treasure that would not only bring them joy, but bring them joy forever? That would be everlasting. A treasure that would not fade out on them, that they wouldn't grow out of, that they wouldn't break or rust, that brought them a joy that would never run dry. No matter where they were, what age they were, whether they were having good times or bad times, they could always go to this treasure and find joy and peace and contentment. If I did not give them this treasure, would I be a loving father? Well, no, I would not. If I love my kids, I will point them to this treasure that will fill their soul forever. No matter what age they are, no matter what circumstances they find themselves in, no matter what part of the world they are in. This is what Christianity is all about. This is what God's kingdom is all about. Matthew 13:44 says these words, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all he had and bought that field." Did you notice those key words? In his joy. Do you know what's supposed to characterize Christianity around the world today? Joy. A joy that is overflowing, a joy that never runs out, a joy that is not bound by time, a joy that is not bound by circumstances, a joy that won't rust, a joy that won't break, a joy that won't wear out, won't be short-lived, a joy that costs you everything, but at the same time is absolutely free. A joy that will last forever. This is what finding the treasure is all about. This is what Christianity is all about. And what is the treasure? The treasure is God Himself. God wants us to be satisfied in Him and Him alone. This is why the Scriptures command us to delight in God. Did you know that you are commanded to delight in God? God commands you to pursue your joy. He does. Look at Psalm 37, verse 4. Delight yourself in the Lord. Just take the very first part of that verse. Delight yourself. You are commanded to delight. God says it, yes. It says the same thing in Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. You are commanded to have joy. That's what he's saying. Rejoice. I command you to have joy. The Scriptures are full of verses that talk about being satisfied in God alone. Look at Psalm 43, verse 4. Then I will go to the altar of God, to God, my exceeding joy. God wants you to have exceeding joy. Psalm 104, verse 34. Let my meditation be pleasing to Him. As for me, I shall be glad in the Lord. 1 Peter 1:8 says the same thing. Peter understood it in the New Testament. As he was writing, he says these words. Though you have not seen Him, you love Him. And though you do not see Him now, but believe in Him, you greatly rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory. An inexpressible joy. That's what God wants you to have. That's what He wants me to have, every Christian to have. Inexpressible joy. That's why He says of Abraham in Genesis chapter 15, verse 1, these words, I am your shield, your very great reward. Let me ask you a serious question. Do these verses characterize your life right now? When someone looks at your life, would they say it is characterized by joy and peace and contentment? Or are you playing the game of Christianity? Are you going through the outward emotions when in actuality, deep down inside, you are living a quiet life of desperation, struggling in your Christianity? This was me for such a long time in my Christianity. If this is you, please take this journey. Because once you have eyes to see it, there is joy everywhere around us. Because everything is from Him and through Him and to Him. But we also know that it is easy to not see that joy, because there are a ton of things in this world that are crying out, "We will bring you satisfaction. We will make you happy. We will bring you pleasure. We will bring you joy." Whether it's sex or drugs or cars, movies, the internet, clothes, sports, just about everything is delivering us that message. But in reality, they'll eventually leave you empty again and again and again, and your eyes will be off of God. In this journey, we will be pointing you to God as the all-satisfying, fulfilling, nourishing, gratifying, rewarding being in all of creation. We are going to be encouraging you to pursue your joy in God passionately. And when you do this, when you look to God alone for your satisfaction, you will have rivers of living water flowing out of you. You will have a deep, abiding joy, not always happiness, but joy. And God will get the greatest glory you could bring to Him as an individual. So, that's another way of describing what Unveiling Glory's journey is all about. Thanks for going through this second lecture. Thanks for still considering it. We hope that the Lord tells you yes for His sake and for yours.